Give me a thumbs up if we're still good on video and audio, and we'll get rocking and rolling. Awesome. Thanks, everybody. So let me present this window here. First of all, let me thank you all for joining today. Wanted to offer up some thoughts about virtual learning, remote learning, the space that we've sort of been thrust into over the course of the last several weeks, for some of us several days. Want to offer up a couple of things. So want to offer up first and foremost my gratitude. I hope you get that from our time together today. I want to make sure that you hear from not just another educator's perspective, but also from a parent perspective, the gratitude that we all have for everything that you've done over the course of the last several weeks. That's number one. Number two, I want to offer sort of some hot tips for how to survive and thrive in the remote learning space. So this is an interesting sort of chapter in our educational history, and I have a unique perspective on it in that at one time I was actually a virtual online teacher, so this space is very familiar to me. I was also an online administrator. I was an assistant principal for a school, and my responsibility was to deal with all of the parent communication that came in from parents saying like, oh my gosh, I have no idea how to do this, which I'm sure many of you have gotten lots of those communications over the course of the last couple of weeks. So first and foremost, I want to just kind of frame what's happened in our space right now. We've been teaching in the brick and mortar in the traditional space for a while now, and that is our normal. So here's what that feels like for us to teach in the brick and mortar space. Do me a favor, take a look at your screen, and I want you to challenge yourself right now. Read out loud. If you're not on mute, we're about to find out. Just read that top line out loud. All you're doing is reading the words as fast as possible. Yellow, blue, orange, and then go down to the second line, third, fourth, fifth, and sixth. Read those lines as fast as possible, just reading the words. You'll find that that's really, really easy. And essentially, that's what's been happening for us in our traditional classrooms. Like, this is a space of familiarity for us. Like, this is something that comes relatively easy to many of us who are experienced in this space. But now what's happened is we've tried to transition this model of brick and mortar learning to the online space. And it seems like things should be very clear, but what we discover is that it's kind of like, if you take a look at this top line, now instead of reading the words as they appear, say the colors that the words are written in. So instead of reading yellow, blue, orange, you should be saying out loud green, yellow, red. And try to do that as fast as possible, every single line, all the way down to the bottom, without making any mistakes. What you'll find really clearly and really quickly is that the opportunities for stumbling and the opportunities for failure in that second example are way more plentiful. And it's exactly what we will find the minute we try to transition from the traditional brick and mortar setting to an online setting. You'll find that, hey, like this should feel familiar, but there are a lot of potential stumbling blocks out there. And so I want to talk about some of those stumbling blocks and some of the things that oftentimes as teachers transition into the virtual space, they trip over. And in order to do that, I want to talk first and foremost about what I sort of affectionately call the 5 commandments of remote learning. And so if you leave with nothing else today, please tune in closely to some of the things that I'm about to talk about. They will ease your path on this journey, I promise you. Number 1, first commandment of remote learning is about boundaries. We need boundaries. Some of you are discovering that in the space of virtual and online learning, we are working more than we ever did in a traditional brick and mortar setting. All of a sudden, now it seems like kids and parents have access to us all of the time. And so I want to encourage you all today. I want to encourage you to set boundaries for both yourself and the students that you serve. I want to offer you permission, as though you even need it from me. Please, 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 for the love, do not respond to emails after a certain hour. Okay? You have to have a clean beginning and a clean ending to your day, similar as you would in a brick and mortar setting. That is a habituated behavior that we need to carry with us into the virtual setting. Teachers should not be working at 10 p.m. Furthermore, our kids should not be working at 10 p.m. Does that mean now you're not going to receive emails and communications between 8, 9, 10, 11 o'clock? No, those will still come in. But what we have to do is we have to set a foundation of understanding between us and our children and their parents or whoever their caregiver is at home, we have to set a foundation of understanding and expectations that, hey, I'm going to be available between maybe the hours of 8 and 4, and I'm going to be regularly responding. Oh, hey, if you're not on mute, put yourself on mute, please. And let people know that, hey, I'm going to be continuously responding to emails between 8 and 4. I'm going to have office hours strategically throughout the course of the day. But after 4, like, I've got to do a hard stop because I've got to set some boundaries for myself and for my own family. Boundaries are necessary. Again, think back to the work that we do at the front half of the school year, that first week or two. It's all about establishing habituated behaviors and foundations of understanding. We have to do the same thing in the online space. Communication is key. And you'll find in the online space that communication is king. Make sure, here's a piece of advice. Do yourself a favor and have different communication platforms for kids and for parents or for caregivers at home. Because I imagine what many of you are experiencing right now is you've blasted out your email, and now kids have your email address, and now parents have your email address, and you're waking up in the morning and you're looking at your emails, and it's like, you've got all of these emails. And what happens when kids get a hold of our emails sometimes is they'll email you a question, potentially some of their classmates will be included, and then all of a sudden their classmates will start having separate conversations, reply all, reply all, reply all in your inbox. And now you're in this terrible position where you have to try to like sift through all the nonsense and find things that are potentially from parents that you need to prioritize and get to immediately. Separate those out. Ask your kids and say, hey, like if you're working on an LMS like Google Classroom, or you're working in Schoology or Canvas, or you want to have your kids meet you in a place like Padlet and all of their questions go there, all of the kid questions need to go in one place. All of the parent communications typically need to go to your email. Keep those separate. Trust me, it will help you prioritize things that come in from parents that you need to answer immediately. Next, this is a hard one for us. Shift the paradigm relative to seat time and understand that mastery matters and seat time does not. In the virtual space, seat time no longer matters. The general rule of thumb in the virtual space is 30 minutes per subject per day. Now, that's really hard because what we know is that all of our kids don't complete the same level of work in the same amount of time. They just don't. They never will. And so what you need to do is you need to take a look at your kids and you need to aim that 30 minutes of seat time at your lowest performing students, at your struggling learners. Ask yourself, like, what a quantity of work will probably take my struggling learners about 30 minutes worth of time. Now that's going to be really difficult for you because you're going to have that little voice in the back of your head that says, but my high flyers are going to knock this out in 5 or 10 minutes, like, and you're going to get real nervous about that. Know that that's okay, right? Virtual learning is all about voice and choice and self-pacing. So here's the workaround for that. You've got your list of must-dos and your list of may-dos. Your must-dos are those things that take 30 minutes. Your may-dos are your things that you're offering your high flyers and you're telling them. Again, this is about training kids to develop new habituated behaviors. You're telling your high flyers, hey, if you're able to knock this out in 5 or 10 minutes, like, go in and work through some of those may-dos so that you're at least getting 30 minutes per subject per day. And again, have that communication with parents, which leads me to my next commandment. Parents, guardians, and caregivers are the linchpin. They are the linchpin. I've talked to so many teachers right now who are just like, and parents, quite frankly, who are saying things to me like, this feels like homeschooling. Well, yeah. That's because we're schooling from home. Of course it feels like homeschooling. So I'll tell you, in my experience as a virtual administrator and a virtual teacher, here's what we've always known to be true in education. Education should have always been sort of like this handshake agreement that occurred between us and parents, where we said, hey, we're going to have your kids for 6 hours a day, and you're going to have them for the rest of the day. Let's make sure that we're continuing some of the things that happen in school and at home. And about 10, 20 years ago, like, that handshake agreement was still intact. What we've discovered is over the course of the last 10 or 15 years, like, that handshake agreement has been lost, and parents have sort of just expected us to do all the things all the time within the 6 hours that we have. This is, I mean, if we're looking for silver linings, this is a perfect opportunity to re-engage parents and caregivers with us, to let them know, like, hey, I, as the teacher, am going to do A, B, and C, but in order for this to be successful, you have to do D, E, or F. Notice I didn't say D, E, and F. Like, they have to pick one of those things, and they've got to come a little towards us in order for this to be successful. I will tell you over and over and over again, it is excruciatingly rare that we find kids who are able to work their way through virtual learning independent of a parent or caregiver and be successful. Last but not least, my final commandment for remote learning: breathe. Take a breath. I promise you it will never be more challenging than it is right now. Many of you have jumped in. Guys, think about what we've accomplished. I want you to sit back and really think about what you've accomplished. You have taken an entire system of education, and within a matter of days, you have flipped it completely on its head and turned it into this entirely virtual experience. Do me a favor, like, please give yourself some credit for that, first and foremost, and take a breath. Take a breath and relax. We don't have to be perfect tomorrow. All we have to be tomorrow is a little bit better than we were today. That's it. That's our only goal. And you know what? Like, I'm going to keep preaching from the mountaintops on my Twitter feed, on my Facebook account, like the work that teachers have done nationwide. And I'm going to keep trying to talk to our parents and let them know, like, hey, take a deep breath, relax. We're all learning at this together. Be cognizant of what you've done and how impressive it is. Let's talk about engaging kids in the virtual space real quick. I want to talk about engagement because obviously engagement is important in a traditional setting. It is also important in a virtual setting. Here's something I want you to come to understand. Kids miss you a lot. Yes, even high school kids miss you a lot. It was interesting. So something you should know about me is I still coach high school football. I'm still working with high school kids every day. And it was funny because a couple days ago I was talking to this kid, Antoine, and I was like, Antoine, what are you most surprised about virtual learning? And he looked at me like he was embarrassed to say it. He's like, Kieschnick, if I'm being really honest, I do miss my teachers. Like he was embarrassed to say it, right? Traditional high school kid. They miss you. Here's something you also got to understand. Students also miss each other. They miss each other bad. I'll tell you, this morning, my 8-year-old daughter was talking with her 2nd grade class, and she was so thrilled because this morning they were meeting in a Google Meet and she was having a chance to talk and to see them. I drove by the high school this last weekend, and when I drove by the high school, guess what I saw? I saw a bunch of our seniors, about 20 of them, had come up to the high school and parked their cars in a circle, 6 feet apart in a circle, so that they could talk to each other. Like, think about like what some of the things like our seniors are missing. Like, they're missing the 2nd semester of their senior year. They're going to miss things like graduation. They miss you. They miss each other. And so one of the challenges for us in the virtual space is to try to figure out how to engage them on purpose with you, with the content, and with one another. And one of the easiest ways to do that is just with effective video content. Like, here's a really easy way. If you're ever looking for, because I know, I'll tell you, here's what a lot of parents are upset about right now. And again, I've heard this from so many parents that, like, there's tons of work coming home, but there's not enough instruction to go with the work, and my kids don't know how to do the work. We're hearing that a lot at sort of the middle school, secondary level. And so one of the things that you can do to make effective video lessons really, really easy, because again, keeping in mind that if we want to engage kids, they miss you, we've got to engage with them in the virtual format. Use a platform like Zoom or like Google Meets, the one that we're using right now. The fact is, if you're on Google Meets right now, if you're looking at my face, congratulations, you already know how to use that platform, right? So you take that platform, you take a platform like Google Slides or PowerPoint, and then you take a tool like Screencastify. I love Screencastify. It's really easy. If you were to go onto their page, you could download it right now. There's a plugin that you can download that installs right into Chrome. It will create a sort of like reddish pinkish arrow that shows up right in the top right-hand corner of your screen. You click on that arrow and it will begin a screencast where it will capture you on video, it will capture whatever's on your screen, and you can provide virtual instruction for kids in 5-minute chunks. Like, they are hungry for this. This is a super easy way to do that. Also, here's something I want you to keep in mind. Remote does not equal reclusive. So we're talking about remote learning right now, and I want to be very, very clear that remote learning does not equate to reclusive learning. It's important for us to understand that learning rarely happens in cultures of negativity, loneliness, or isolation. We know that to be true. So here's sort of industry standard type stuff for the virtual space, and something I want you to shoot for. Shoot for, during the course of a week, a minimum of 5 office hours. Now, this does not have to be an entire hour. You can break this up into 2 30-minute chunks. It can be 1 30-minute chunk, but shoot for a minimum of 5 office hours, times where you will be in a virtual platform like Google Meets, like Zoom, where kids and or parents can drop in at any time and just ask questions. Again, it's going to alleviate a lot of those emails if you've got those office hours. I want you to also shoot for 3 virtual asynchronous instructional sessions. So what we were talking about on this last page, shoot for creating 3 5-minute chunks a week where you are providing authentic instruction for your kids. And then last but not least, like, figure out where you can provide 2 virtual synchronous instructional opportunities per week where kids come to you and they receive live, in the moment instruction. Again, sort of like industry standard for the virtual space, and it is going to alleviate a lot of that communication, because then kids and parents will know that there are opportunities for constant touch points with you. Something I also want us to consider in the vein of like remote does not equal reclusive. I always talk about, when I'm on the road and I'm talking to educators and I'm talking to school leaders, sort of like the golden trifecta of blended learning or remote instruction. As you take a look at what you're asking kids to do every single day, ask yourself, are kids being engaged with the teacher, with the content, and with one another? Take a look at the daily plan you're giving kids and ask yourself, like, are kids engaged with the teacher? Here's the nice thing. If you do this and you've got office hours and you've got 3 opportunities for virtual asynchronous instruction and 2 opportunities for virtual synchronous instruction, like, you'll get that engaged with the teacher part. Are kids engaged with the content? Again, this one's really easy for us. And then ask yourself, like, where throughout the course of my planning do kids get the opportunity to engage with one another? If we're looking at what highly effective virtual instruction looks like, these 3 things have to be omnipresent. Are kids engaged with the teacher, with the content, and with one another? Again, here are some platforms that you can use to get kids engaged. So I love Flipgrid for getting kids engaged with one another. It's an awesome way for kids to record 30, 60-second, 90-second videos and exchange them, and you can exchange them in an entirely safe platform. Again, there's Zoom. You can do this via your LMS within the chat, Seesaw, Remind, Vimeo. All of these are great for that. As you're thinking about what this looks like as we move forward, I want you to be cognizant of something. The schools that we walked out of won't be the same schools that we walk back into when this is all over. And that's okay. Many of you are concerned in all likelihood because you're looking at some of the tools that I talked about before. You're looking at things like Google Meets. You're looking at a new learning management system. You're looking at all these new things that you're being asked to do. And you have this mindset that, like, oh man, when I go back into my classroom, none of that stuff is going to matter. And what I want to encourage you about today is know that everything that you're learning and doing in the virtual space is entirely transferable the minute we find ourselves back in our schools. And our schools aren't going to be the same. They're going to be different. You know what else is going to be different? Our kids' expectations. Our kids' expectations for what school looks like is going to be different. And now, for better or for worse, like, there's no excuses for us. Like, now we know all these digital tools. Like, kids are going to continue to expect to be able to engage in that sort of way with these digital tools. Please know that all these methodologies that you're learning are entirely transferable. A couple other things I want to address relative to assessment. I know this is a question that has popped up a lot from teachers that I've talked to around the country. Lots of teachers are worried about the assessments that we're giving our kids, especially at the high school level. It's like high school and middle school level, and in some of the upper elementary grades as well. Some teachers are very worried about cheating. Like, oh man, when I give kids an assessment, like, how do I make sure they don't cheat? So here's a couple words of advice to make sure your assessments in the virtual space are authentic. Number 1, make sure your assessments are shorter and more frequent. You want to know why kids cheat? Kids cheat because the stakes are really high. And when the stakes are really high, a student's desire to cheat is also really high because they know there are very few opportunities to redeem themselves. And so when the stakes are lower, we know that a student's likelihood of cheating is also lower, right? There's a direct correlation between both of those things. And so if we've got shorter assessments, you're talking 3, 4, 5 questions assessments, 5-question assessments that occur every couple of days. And again, you don't have to bend over backwards to grade these. Like, throw them into Google Forms, quizzes, like things that self-grade. Make sure these quizzes are shorter and more frequent because, again, when the stakes are lower, cheating behaviors are also reduced. We know that to be true. I've witnessed it in the virtual space over and over and over. Again, we talked about parents and caregivers are the linchpin. If you've got a big, heavy assessment that you want to give kids, I'm talking unit test type assessment, like do what we used to do in the remote learning space in our post-secondary institutions, right? Like for those of you who got a master's degree online, or if you did like I did, like took some correspondence classes, like remember those in the mail? You used to go into a place and there was a proctor. There was a proctor who had to sign off to say, hey, this assessment was taken with integrity. Encourage your parents to act as proctors during that time so that you know that your big time heavy assessments are taken with integrity. Also, we've got to change our assessments. If you've got assessment questions that a child can Google the answer to, then A, it's probably not a great question. And B, you know what? We've got to add some stuff on the end of these questions. So if you've got a multiple choice sort of A, B, C, and D response for kids, simple addition, go in and add a short answer why at the bottom of that question so that they're required to choose from this list of 4 and give you the why they chose that answer. The why will let you know with authenticity whether or not they actually understand what they're choosing. Again, super simple addition to some of the assessments that you already have to make sure that they are being taken with integrity. Last but not least, I want to talk about student apathy. Do me a favor, everyone right now, go to menti.com. Open up a new window and go to menti.com. When you go to menti.com, I'm going to ask you to enter in code 277233. Everyone go ahead and do that. I will do the same. You're going to go to menti.com right now. Somebody do me a favor, jump on the mic real quick and let me know that you can see the menti.com that I've shared with you. It says predict what are the 3 leading causes of student apathy in the online space.
I can see it.
Awesome, thank you. Go to menti.com and I'm going to ask you to enter in 3 words. Because so much about student success in the online space, but be it elementary, middle, or high school, is combating student apathy. So let's think about that for a moment. Let's think about what are the 3 leading causes of student apathy in the online learning space. Enter in your 3 words and hit submit. What's going to happen is we're going to create a word cloud from all of you. I'm curious to know from you, what do you believe are the 3 leading causes of student apathy in the online learning space? 3 simple words. Lock those in. Thanks to one of you who's done that already. Good. Second person is in. Go ahead and lock in those answers. Keep in mind in a word cloud, as you see answers coming in, words that show up most frequently will appear larger. Words that show up less frequently will appear smaller. Again, the question is simple. Make a prediction. What are the 3 leading causes of student apathy in the online learning space? And we know that this isn't unique to online learning. We know that students oftentimes when they're with us in a traditional space are apathetic. Like the minute they put that head down on the desk, like you know you're battling student apathy. The same is true online. Not only is the same true, in the online space, we are up against so much more in terms of difficulties because at least in the brick and mortar space, oftentimes like we had them in a self-contained environment. Now they're everywhere. They are sitting in front of a computer, and in front of this computer, they have access to all of the knowledge of the human experience. They can go anywhere. They can do anything. And so what is it that creates apathy amongst students? Take a look at what we're seeing here, right? We're seeing the words bored and boredom show up over and over and over. So the question for us in virtual learning, if we want to do this really well, is how do we combat boredom? Well, first thing, here's my first piece of advice. If ever you are going to meet with kids in a virtual platform, they have to do something. Notice what you're doing right now. Notice what I asked you to do at the start of our time together, right? The start of our time together, I asked you to read those lines of text, and then I asked you to go through and I asked you to read the colors that those words were in. Do a thing, do a thing, do a thing. Notice towards the end here, like I'm asking you to do a thing. Create a simple word cloud. Think about, as we meet with kids, how do we combat boredom? How do we combat apathy? The same is true in the adult learning space. We've got to get kids doing things. I'm seeing two other words that show up, understanding and frustration. So oftentimes, frustration comes from a lack of understanding, and understanding comes from a lack of clarity, and lack of clarity comes from a lack of connection to you. I was talking to teachers in Georgia yesterday. I was doing a big webinar like this in Georgia, and one of the teachers asked me, he said, hey, my kids are doing worse on their assessments than they've ever done before. And my response was, well, of course they are. They have less access to you than they've ever had before. So if we're looking for silver linings, like, man, if our kids are struggling in the virtual learning space, it's because chances are they don't have enough access to us and they don't have enough instruction from you. Hooray for job security. Surprise, surprise. If we want kids to get a great education, they need great educators. And that means you. And so again, like that lack of understanding and that frustration often comes from a lack of instruction. So finding ways that we can connect with kids via office hours, via virtual synchronous instruction, via virtual asynchronous instruction, and then prioritizing those communications. And last but not least, I see the word accountability up there. I see the word accountability. Again, this is super important, and think about parents. Think about at-home caregivers. Guys, we're going to need them. We're going to need them. And if you've got families who just will not engage with you, and some of you have those, I know you do. I see those families out there online in the social media space. I'm sure you've seen them as well. I can't tell you the number of parents I've seen post on social media, like on Instagram or Facebook or Twitter or something, like, man, all of this work coming home, like, I'm not doing any of it. All I'm focused on is mental and physical wellness. Like, I've seen those posts from parents, and they wear them. They wear them like a badge of honor. And it's like, okay, like, if that's going to be your outlook, and if you are dealing with parents like that, know that in the virtual learning setting, like, let yourself off the hook a little bit. There's very little you can do. Remember, I talked about the handshake agreement with parents. We are going to do A, B, and C on children's behalf, and we are going to count on parents to do either D, E, or F. So in terms of accountability, we have to make sure that we are asking parents to help us, at-home caregivers to help us with accountability. It's the only thing that's going to help us move kids forward. And again, my hope is one of the great byproducts that comes out of this is sort of like the revival of that handshake agreement between us and parents. Let me go back here real quick and just offer one last reminder. When you have a chance to engage with kids, and that word engagement showed up on the word cloud over and over and over, when you have a chance to engage with kids, they have to do something. When you have a chance to engage in a platform like this or Zoom or whatever it may be, the communication can't be constantly unilateral. It can't just be a blast of your voice to their ears, especially in a live synchronous scenario like this one. We've got to get kids doing. We've got to get kids doing. We've got to get kids doing. All right. That is it for me for right now. It has been about 28 minutes. Again, that's probably right around the threshold, sort of that 25-minute mark for like a live virtual session like this. I will escape out of here. I will go back into the meeting and stop sharing. If you have questions, comments, concerns, heart palpitations that you're having about remote learning, now's the time. I'm here to answer any of those questions that you would like me to answer. If you want to jump on the mic, feel free. Otherwise, I'll start knocking out questions. Melissa, I see yours here. Melissa, do you suggest to have 5 hours of office hours where we are accessible through video chat? So Melissa, doesn't have to be 5 hours throughout the course of the week. It just has to be 5 opportunities. So again, it could be a matter of like, hey, I'm going to be in my office you have live access to me for 20 minutes sometime, say like 10 a.m. And then I'm going to offer 25 or 30 minutes at 2 p.m. Where you can pop in. So do they have to be full hours? No, but I would suggest that you have 5 opportunities for kids to jump in and talk to you. Good, 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 good. Looking for, oh, I'm seeing lots of comments about how hard the reading thing was. Elizabeth says menti.com. Is that free? Elizabeth, yes. It's called Mentimeter. So when you search it, search Mentimeter. It's called Mentimeter.com. That tool is entirely free. One of my favorite ed tech tools that's out there. Yeah, so Angela says, I've tried an hour with 2nd graders and it was too long. 100%, Angela. So again, like be mindful of your student's attention span. Keep in mind your average child's attention span typically equates to the number of minutes they are in age, and that maxes out between 20 and 25. So if you've got 2nd graders, yeah, an hour is going to be way too long for just about anything. Keep in mind too, if you're recording video lessons, 30 minutes is going to be way too long. You're going to want to try to keep it within that 2 to maybe 7 minute mark. I like 5 minutes just because Screencastify for the free version has a limit of 5 minutes. So it's nice for me. It forces me to be really succinct in my communication. Good. Maxine says, great reminder about student-to-student interaction as well. Yeah, absolutely. You're welcome. Like they do. They really miss each other. It's the thing, especially for littles, it's the thing that I think they're really most lamenting in the virtual space is they don't have that access to each other in the way that they used to. And they're not like high school kids where they can just go drive up to the high school and park in a circle. Awesome. Stephanie, I'm glad you found it informative. Thank you so much. Kimberly is saying, when you say office hours to pop in, do you just mean have a Google Meet set up for just in case someone needs something? Yeah, Kimberly, that's exactly what I'm talking about. So it can be a Google Meet, it can be a Zoom, but just 20, 25 minutes where you're going to sit there and you're going to have your computer on and you can work on other work at that time. But if somebody pops in, boom, you'll pop your camera on, you'll have a quick conversation. Some of those students will need maybe 30 seconds of your time and then they'll be out. But it's just nice to establish lifelines like that for parents and kids. It's going to alleviate so much of the heavy communication that you're experiencing right now. Yeah, so Paula, you're making a great point. Paula says, I won't present information on Google Meets. We meet for story time. They're too easily distracted at 5th grade. So again, like you've got to do exactly what you're doing there, which is like match the platform to your students and to the task. Yeah, Dennis says, love the suggestion about office hours. My kids are trying to get a chance to see me and each other. They absolutely are. And again, the office hours will alleviate, like when kids know that you have them, they'll alleviate so many of the emails that you're receiving, because I'm sure it's a nightmare for you right now, some of your inboxes. I totally understand it. Yeah, middle schoolers are missing each other right now. Good, set up those Google Meet office hours. Yeah, Dennis, I see your grandson's a high school junior. He plays soccer. Yeah, he and his friends are parking and meeting each other. Yep. Yeah, those virtual field trips, Jason, to art museums, those are awesome. So there's tons of those virtual experiences. Like check out Nearpod. Nearpod is such an awesome tool. So many great virtual like tours and field trip experiences in Nearpod, if anyone is looking for something like that as well. Good. Is there a platform for kids to talk to each other through messaging? Nicole, are you looking at like phone options? Are you looking at like computer options? Because I mean, there's tons of them. So like a Google Classroom has the message board that kids can talk to each other. I'll tell you this, for the high school kids that I work with, like I've got them all on a WhatsApp group on my phone. I've literally been getting messages this entire time. So like I've got about 65 high school kids that are in a WhatsApp group with me where we can all stay in contact and message one another. They can all stay in contact with each other and message each other through WhatsApp. There's tons of different options for that. Yeah, Ralph says, thanks for the webinar and words of encouragement. Ralph, I hope that you got that from me. I'm so grateful. As a parent, I do want to say this for anyone who needs to hop off. If you want to hop off, feel free to hop off. I'll answer any questions for the next few minutes that come into the chat. But as a parent, I want to make sure that you've all heard from at least one parent today, because you may not be hearing it right now because parents are in the midst of this too. From a parent, thank you guys so much. Thank you so much for all you do, have done, endeavor to do on behalf of our children. Like I will, like I said, I'll continue to scream it from the mountaintops that in the age of global pandemic, when you take a look at what our teachers have done, our teachers have made sure our children were fed physically, fed mentally, and fed emotionally. And as a parent, I can't thank you all enough for that. I don't think the overall community at large will ever be able to thank you enough for that. Thank you guys so much. I'm so grateful. So if you got to jump off, feel free to jump off. I'll answer any other questions that show up here for the next 5 or 10 minutes or so. Awesome. Sandra, the Bold School Book Talk you're going to hold virtually with your staff. Awesome. Keep me posted on when that is. I'm happy to pop in for a little bit or answer any questions. Thank you all so much. Good. Appreciate you all. Jennifer, I'm glad you enjoyed it. Thank you. Hey, Felicia, thanks so much. I appreciate you. Awesome. Paulette, I'm glad it was helpful. Thank you so much. Tania, I'll keep screaming from the mountaintops. You got it. Thank you all. Yeah, Jill. Jill says, will you share the hand motions that I shared at the North Carolina Ties event? Yes, remember, it was determine the learning outcome, select a highly effective instructional strategy, hold your belt like you're holding a tool belt, support that instructional strategy with digital tools, and then down here by your knees, right? Like you're laying out a blueprint. Develop your instructional plan and then stomp it out with your feet. Rigor and relevance. Determine the learning outcome, select a highly effective instructional strategy, support that strategy with digital and non-digital tools, develop your instructional plan, and then assess for rigor relevance. Stomp it out with your feet. Hope you got that. Patrick, from your experience, do you have any suggestions on how to teach music band online? Any little tips? Yeah. So check out Flipgrid if you haven't already, Patrick. Awesome way to get kids in a virtual setting, being able to record parts of performances or just like parts of rehearsals, and then for you to be able to jump on via a video medium and provide just quick feedback for them, like things that they potentially need to remember, like instructional tips. Like Flipgrid's a really, really good platform for music folks, especially when it comes to getting kids actually working on the music and you being able to see them and hear them in sort of an asynchronous learning environment. Trish, I'm glad it was helpful. Thank you. Appreciate you, Jessica. You're welcome, everyone. Happy to share. Happy to share. Melissa asks, what's your favorite platform to gather virtually with your students where you try to all come together at the same time? If you're under 100, I love Zoom. The stuff that Zoom has offered, Melissa, right now in the free space, that free platform to all engage virtually where you can see all of your kids. You can control whether they're muted or unmuted as the presenter. I love Zoom for that right now. Google Meets, also an awesome platform for that. For whatever reason, I just find the bandwidth issues with Zoom right now have been less than with Google Meets. Awesome. You're welcome, Deb. Thank you. Thank you all so much. Teresa, you're asking if we'll have access to the slides to review later. Yeah, Sandra, will you just shoot me an email reminder and I'll happily send you all these slides. 5 tip slides, the 5 commandments slide, Diane, absolutely, I'll show that. We'll go present now, a window, this one here. Yeah, you want to just see the 5 tips one again. Present and boom, 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 boom. Good. If you wanted the 5 commandment slide again, there it is. Do me a favor, just because I don't want to leave it up because I can't see the chat and present my screen all at the same time. So if you want this, go ahead and take a quick screenshot of it. Take a picture of it on your phone if you want it. I'll have it up for the next 15 seconds, and then I'm going to go back to the chat. So if you're frantically looking for the camera app on your phone right now, you've got 10 seconds. Or just take a screenshot. If you do, I think it's Control-Command-4 on a MacBook. Shift-Command-4 on a MacBook will allow you to do a screenshot, if you're wondering. Hit Shift, hit Command, hit 4. It'll bring up a crosshairs, and then you can go zoop and capture the whole thing if you want. Final 5 seconds. Then I want to go back to the chat. 4, 3, 2, 1. And let me stop sharing. Boom. And go back to the chat. What do we got? Awesome. Hey, you're all welcome. Thank you so much. Great. Awesome. Melissa, thanks for following me on Twitter. I appreciate it. Awesome. You're welcome, Stacy. Thank you all so much. All right. Looks like we're down to 62 people. What's the WhatsApp? Yeah, so Elizabeth, WhatsApp is just an app you can download on your phone. I will show you the, let me show you the, so I'll try to show you, see the icon right there? Sorry, my Twitter feed is going nuts too. So this is WhatsApp. That's what the icon looks like. So it's just a communication platform. What's great about WhatsApp is it's nice. It's entirely asynchronous. So you can see all the notifications I've gotten from my kids on there just since we've been on the phone. So that allows you to just connect. I love stuff that's based on that I could just take with me on my phone, especially when it comes to communicating with kids. Because then I don't have to be sitting in front of my computer in my office all day, which is not a thing that I love. I'm not sure. I'm sure it's not a thing that a lot of us love, but yeah. So it's just a communication platform. Really, really easy to use. Super intuitive. Check it out. Courtney, thank you. I appreciate you. Elizabeth, you're welcome. You're welcome. All right, everybody, if there's nothing else, I will leave you to it. It is 10:42. Thank you for ending the recording. Thank you all for being here. Appreciate y'all. Hope it was helpful. Have a great day, everyone.